The late afternoon sun streamed through the towering windows of Whitmore Academy, casting a golden hue over the polished oak floors. The school, known for its prestigious curriculum and top-tier faculty, was an oasis of privilege in the heart of New York City. But for Clara Evans, this place was more than just a prestigious institution. It was a second home. Clara moved through her classroom with the kind of effortless grace that came from years of experience. Her students, a diverse group of children with special needs, responded to her in ways that many other teachers envied. She had a way of seeing them, not just their conditions or diagnoses, but the potential that lay beyond. It was during a reading exercise that she noticed him. At the far corner of the room, seated near the large bookshelf, a boy sat motionless in a wheelchair. His hands rested limply on the desk, his gaze fixed on nothing in particular. Unlike the other children who were eagerly participating in the lesson, he remained silent, isolated, as if the world around him barely existed. Clara had heard about Theo Sterling. Everyone had. The only son of Nathan Sterling, the billionaire whose name carried weight in the financial world, Theo had been enrolled at Whitmore Academy under special circumstances. His mother had passed away 2 years ago, and since then, the boy had withdrawn into himself, refusing to engage with teachers, therapists, or even other children. Clara took a slow, deliberate step toward him. "Hey Theo," she said softly, crouching beside his wheelchair so they were at eye level. "Would you like to read with us today?" He didn't answer. His blue-gray eyes, eerily similar to the man watching from just outside the classroom, flickered with something unreadable, caution maybe. Clara smiled, undeterred. "That's okay. You don't have to. But if you ever feel like joining, we'd love to have you." Still no response. She glanced at the open book in her hands, an old favorite of hers. "You know, this story is about a boy who thought he was different from everyone else. He felt like no one understood him. But guess what? He found out he was stronger than he ever realized." For the briefest moment, she thought she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. Clara didn't press him further. Instead, she placed a second copy of the book on his desk and moved away, allowing him space while still keeping him in the circle of the classroom's warmth. From the hallway, Nathan Sterling watched in silence. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, the billionaire cut an imposing figure. His presence alone demanded attention, though the children inside remained blissfully unaware of the man standing behind the glass panel of the classroom door. His gaze was unreadable, but beneath the hard exterior, there was something else, hesitation, maybe even hope. He had seen a dozen teachers try and fail with his son. Theo was a wall that no one had been able to climb. And yet, there was something different about this woman, something about the way she didn't force, didn't demand. Nathan folded his arms, watching as Theo's fingers hesitantly brushed against the pages of the book Clara had left him. For the first time in years, a flicker of possibility stirred in his chest. As the last bell of the day echoed through the halls of Whitmore Academy, Clara Evans gathered her teaching materials, carefully stacking them into a neat pile on her desk. It had been a good day, filled with small victories, one of which was the hesitant flicker of curiosity she had seen in Theo Sterling's eyes. Just as she reached for her bag, a soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Mrs. Holloway, the school's head administrator, standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Ms. Evans, the headmaster would like to see you," she said, her tone polite but firm. Clara frowned slightly. "Now?" Mrs. Holloway simply nodded. A quiet murmur of curiosity followed Clara as she made her way down the long mahogany-paneled hallway. Teachers rarely got unexpected summons at the end of the day, and certainly not from the headmaster himself. When she stepped into the office, she expected to find the usual somber-faced administrators discussing curriculum or student progress. Instead, her gaze landed on a man standing near the window, tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed. Nathan Sterling. The billionaire turned at the sound of her entrance, his piercing blue-gray eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch for half a second. "Ms. Evans," he said smoothly, his voice low and measured. "We need to talk." Clara sat across from Nathan Sterling in the headmaster's office, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The billionaire exuded a quiet authority, his tailored suit crisp, his posture rigid, as if he were a man accustomed to being in control. Yet, beneath the polished exterior, there was something else. A weight. A weariness that even his steely demeanor couldn't quite hide. He studied her for a moment before speaking. "Theo is my son," he said, his voice even but laced with something deeper, something raw. "My only child." Clara nodded, waiting. Nathan exhaled, glancing toward the large window where the city skyline stretched into the evening haze. 2 years ago, he lost his mother. Since then he's changed. He shuts people out. Refuses to engage. Therapy, specialized programs, none of it has worked. His jaw tightened. "He doesn't speak to me. Barely even looks at me." Clara's heart ached at the quiet confession. She had seen grief take many forms, especially in children. Some lashed out. Others, like Theo, retreated so deeply into themselves that the world around them became a blur. "I saw the way he looked at you today," Nathan continued, turning his gaze back to her. "It wasn't much. But it was something." He paused, as if measuring his next words. "And that's more than I've seen in a long time." Clara blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "You want me to be Theo's personal tutor?" Nathan Sterling leaned forward slightly, his fingers laced together on the polished mahogany desk. "Yes." His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, an urgency that didn't quite match his composed exterior. "I need someone who can reach him. Someone who won't give up the moment he shuts down." Clara hesitated, her mind racing. Teaching Theo in a structured classroom setting was one thing, but becoming his private tutor? That meant stepping into his world, into the home of one of the wealthiest men in the country. As if sensing her hesitation, Nathan continued, "You'll have full creative freedom. Whatever methods you think will help him, I'll support. And I'll compensate you accordingly." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a folded slip of paper, and slid it across the desk. Clara unfolded it. The number staring back at her made her breath hitch. It was more than she had ever earned in a year, maybe even 2. She glanced up at him. "This isn't just about money," she said carefully. For the first time, something in Nathan's expression softened. "No," he admitted. "It's about my son." Clara stared at the offer in front of her, the weight of the decision pressing against her chest. It was an incredible opportunity, one that most teachers could only dream of. The salary alone could change her life. And yet, it wasn't the number on the paper that made her hesitate. She had spent years working in classrooms, guiding children with different needs, helping them find their voices. But this, stepping into the private world of a billionaire's son, felt different. She wasn't sure if she belonged there. "I've never done this before," she admitted, looking up at Nathan. "I've never worked one-on-one in a home like this. I don't know if I'm the right person." Nathan's expression remained unreadable, but there was something unwavering in his gaze. "I don't need someone with experience in private tutoring," he said. "I need someone who can reach him. And today you did." Clara pressed her lips together, the memory of Theo's hesitant touch on the book's pages flashing in her mind. He hadn't spoken, hadn't even looked at her for long, but there had been a flicker of something. A tiny crack in the walls he had built around himself. She exhaled slowly. She could walk away now. Pretend this wasn't her responsibility. But then she thought of Theo, alone, withdrawn, lost in a world that no one seemed to understand. And suddenly, she knew. "I'll do it," she said quietly. The wrought iron gates of the Sterling estate loomed ahead, opening soundlessly as Clara's car approached. She had seen luxury before, grand buildings, expensive cars, the occasional glimpse into the lives of the elite, but nothing quite like this. The mansion stood like a monument to wealth, its pristine stone facade bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. Perfect. Immaculate. and utterly lifeless. As she stepped inside, the silence was the first thing she noticed. No laughter. No warmth. Just the soft echo of her footsteps against the marble floors. The house was breathtaking: vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking acres of manicured gardens. Yet, beneath the opulence, there was an emptiness. A butler led her through the grand hallway, past towering bookcases and priceless artwork. "Mr. Sterling will join you shortly," he said before disappearing as swiftly as he had appeared. Clara turned, her gaze landing on a familiar figure seated in a plush armchair near the window. Theo. He was curled up, half hidden in the oversized chair, staring out at the vast, sprawling estate as if it were a prison. His small frame seemed even smaller in the enormous room, swallowed by the space around him. And in that moment, Clara saw it clearly: not just the wealth, not just the grandeur. She saw the loneliness. From the moment Clara stepped into the Sterling estate, she could feel it, the quiet, lingering doubt that clung to the air like an unspoken challenge. The staff was professional, polite even, but their smiles were thin, their glances fleeting. The butlers and housekeepers moved around her with a calculated detachment, as if she were an outsider disrupting a carefully maintained order. It was clear that none of them believed she would last. But it was the man standing near the grand staircase who made his skepticism known. Edward Langley, Nathan Sterling's longtime advisor, regarded her with an unreadable expression, his sharp eyes scanning her from head to toe. Dressed in an impeccable suit, his presence carried the kind of authority that made people second-guess themselves. "I must admit," he said coolly, clasping his hands behind his back, "Mr. Sterling's decision to hire you is unconventional." Clara held his gaze, refusing to shrink beneath his scrutiny. "Unconventional doesn't mean ineffective." Langley's lips twitched in what might have been amusement, or condescension. "Perhaps. But Theo has seen more specialists than I can count. None of them have made progress." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "This house is built on results, Ms. Evans. If you can't provide them, you won't be here long." Clara straightened. "Then I guess I'll have to prove you wrong." At first, Theo barely acknowledged Clara's presence. Their lessons were met with silence, his responses limited to small nods or the occasional glance before retreating into himself again. Clara didn't push. She had seen this kind of hesitation before, walls built not from defiance, but from fear. So she tried a different approach. One afternoon, instead of the usual reading exercises, she placed a blank canvas and a set of paintbrushes in front of him. "No instructions," she said gently. "Just whatever you feel." Theo hesitated, his fingers hovering over the brushes before slowly picking one up. At first, his strokes were uncertain, small tentative movements across the canvas. But as the minutes passed, something shifted. His grip tightened, his strokes became bolder, colors blending and swirling into a silent story only he understood. The next week, she left him a journal. "You don't have to write words," she assured him. "Draw, scribble, make a mess. Whatever helps." One evening, she found the notebook left open on the desk. Inside was a simple sketch: 2 figures standing under a tree. One small, one taller. Clara traced the image with her fingers, a warmth settling in her chest. Theo was speaking. Not with words. Not yet. But he was letting her in. Nathan Sterling was a man who believed in control. In discipline. In results. It was how he had built his empire, and it was how he had always planned to raise his son. So when he walked into the study one evening and found Theo seated on the floor with Clara, surrounded by sketchbooks and music sheets instead of structured lessons, his patience wore thin. "This isn't what I hired you for," he said, his voice sharp, cutting through the quiet hum of the room. Clara looked up, unfazed. "Actually, it is." Nathan folded his arms, his expression unreadable. "I wanted someone who could teach my son how to engage with the world, not waste time with crayons and piano keys." Clara exhaled slowly, setting down the book in her hands. "And what has discipline gotten him so far?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "You've put him through every program money can buy, and he's still shutting everyone out. Maybe it's not about forcing him to be who you think he should be. Maybe it's about meeting him where he is." Nathan's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being questioned, least of all in his own home. But when his gaze flickered toward Theo, who for the first time in years, wasn't recoiling, but listening, something in his stance wavered. And Clara knew she had struck a nerve. Clara had barely stepped into the mansion when she felt it, an undeniable shift in the air. The staff, usually polite if distant, averted their gazes. The butler, who had always greeted her with a formal nod, remained stiff-lipped as he led her toward Nathan's office. She barely had time to process the tension before the door swung open, revealing Nathan standing behind his desk, his expression carved from stone. He didn't offer a greeting. Instead, he tossed a printed email onto the polished surface. "Care to explain this?" Clara's heart pounded as she picked up the paper. The email was addressed to a well-known tabloid, supposedly from her, offering exclusive details about the Sterling family in exchange for a sum that made her stomach turn. Her grip tightened. "This isn't me." Nathan's gaze was cold, unreadable. "So you're saying someone forged this?" "Yes." Clara's voice remained steady, but inside, panic clawed at her ribs. "I would never betray Theo like this. Or you." Nathan exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his hair. "Then why did someone see you accepting a package from a reporter yesterday?" Clara's breath hitched. Someone had set her up. And from the look in Nathan's eyes, he wasn't sure if he believed her. Nathan's voice was like ice, each word cutting deeper than the last. "I trusted you." His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, his jaw tight with barely contained fury. "I let you into my home, into my son's life, and this is what you do." Clara's breath caught in her throat. "Nathan, you have to believe me. I would never." "I don't have to believe anything," he snapped, his blue-gray eyes flashing with anger. "The evidence is right in front of me. You got close to Theo, gained my trust, and now you're cashing in." The words stung more than Clara expected. After everything, after all the progress with Theo, all the time spent trying to help him come out of his shell, this was what Nathan thought of her? She swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "You know me better than that." Nathan shook his head. "Clearly, I don't." The finality in his tone made her stomach sink. "Leave," he said, his voice low but firm. "Now." Clara stood frozen for a moment, searching his face for any trace of doubt, any hesitation. But there was none. With one last glance toward the staircase, toward the room where Theo was, she turned and walked out. And for the first time, the Sterling estate had never felt colder. Clara barely had time to process Nathan's anger before another voice cut through the tension. "I saw her." She turned sharply to see Edward Langley, Nathan's longtime advisor, standing just inside the doorway. His expression was unreadable, but his words carried a quiet certainty that sent a chill down her spine. "I saw her yesterday, just outside the estate," Langley continued, stepping forward. "She was speaking to a man, handing something over in exchange for an envelope." He paused, letting the weight of his accusation settle. A reporter, no doubt. Clara's pulse pounded in her ears. "That's not true." Langley tilted his head, a mockery of curiosity. "Are you saying I'm lying?" "Yes." Her voice was firm, but she could already see the doubt clouding Nathan's face. Nathan exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "Damn it, Clara." He turned to Langley. "Did anyone else see this?" "One of the staff mentioned it to me," Langley said smoothly. "They didn't think much of it at the time. But given the email," he trailed off, letting the implication settle. Clara clenched her fists. She knew what this was. A setup. But the worst part wasn't the accusation. It was the way Nathan was looking at her, like he didn't know her at all. Clara stepped out of the Sterling mansion, her heart heavy with the weight of unjust accusations. Being accused of betraying Nathan's trust and exploiting Theo was something she had never imagined. Yet, deep down, she knew she was innocent and resolved to uncover the mastermind behind this scheme. Returning to her modest apartment, Clara began piecing together recent events. She recalled the skeptical glances from some household staff, particularly Edward Langley, Nathan's personal advisor. He had exhibited distrust toward her from the very beginning. Determined to start with those who might have seen or heard something, Clara discreetly contacted a few staff members she felt she could trust. After several confidential conversations, one revealed witnessing Langley meeting a stranger near the mansion's rear gate days before the incident occurred. This clue propelled Clara to delve deeper. She sought assistance from a friend in the tech industry to trace the origin of the fabricated email. After hours of analysis, they discovered that the email had been sent from an IP address linked to a cafe near Langley's office. Armed with this evidence, Clara knew she needed to confront Nathan once more to vindicate herself and protect her relationship with Theo. Clara sat in her modest apartment, the weight of recent events pressing heavily on her shoulders. The accusation of betrayal, the abrupt dismissal, and the loss of her connection with Theo played on a relentless loop in her mind. But beneath the sorrow lay a simmering determination to uncover the truth. She began her investigation by revisiting the fabricated email that had appended her life. Drawing upon her limited technical knowledge, Clara scrutinized the email's metadata, focusing on the headers to trace its origin. She discovered that the email had been sent from an IP address associated with a local cafe, a place frequented by many, including some from the Sterling household. Clara recalled the skepticism she had faced from Edward Langley, Nathan's personal advisor. His demeanor had always been cold, his eyes filled with distrust. Determined to delve deeper, Clara discreetly contacted a few staff members she had befriended during her tenure at the mansion. One of them mentioned seeing Langley meeting a stranger near the estate's rear entrance days before the scandal broke. Piecing together the information, a troubling picture emerged. Langley, fearing that Clara's empathetic approach was influencing Nathan's decisions regarding Theo's upbringing, had orchestrated the deceit. He believed that Clara's methods undermined the strict discipline he deemed essential for Theo's development. Determined to gather concrete evidence, Clara enlisted the help of a tech-savvy friend to further analyze the email's origin. They uncovered that the email's metadata contained inconsistencies pointing toward deliberate manipulation, strengthening the case against Langley. Armed with this revelation, Clara knew she had to confront Nathan, not only to clear her name but to protect Theo from the toxic influence lurking within his own home. Clara stood before the imposing doors of the Sterling mansion, her heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and determination. Clutched in her hand was a folder containing the evidence she had painstakingly gathered to clear her name. Taking a deep breath, she knocked firmly, ready to face Nathan and unveil the truth. The butler led her to Nathan's study, where he sat behind a massive oak desk, his expression unreadable. He gestured for her to sit, but Clara remained standing, her resolve unwavering. "Nathan," she began, her voice steady, "I've come to prove my innocence." He raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident. "I'm listening." Clara opened the folder, revealing a series of documents. "This is the original email that accused me of contacting the tabloids. Upon closer inspection, I noticed discrepancies in the metadata, indicating it was fabricated." Nathan leaned forward, scrutinizing the papers. "And what does this prove?" "It proves that someone within your inner circle orchestrated this deception," Clara replied. "I conducted further investigations and discovered that the IP address from which the email originated traces back to a cafe frequently visited by Edward Langley." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "You're accusing my advisor?" "Yes," Clara affirmed. "Langley has always been wary of my methods with Theo. He believes in strict discipline, while I've employed a more empathetic approach. Fearing his influence over you might wane, he sought to remove me from the equation." Nathan's face hardened as he absorbed the information. "These are serious allegations, Clara." "I understand," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "But the evidence speaks for itself. I would never betray your family or Theo. My only intention has been to help your son heal and grow." Silence enveloped the room as Nathan processed her words. Finally, he exhaled deeply, the weight of the situation evident on his features. "If what you say is true," he began slowly, "then I've wrongfully accused you and allowed someone else's deceit to cloud my judgment." Clara softened her tone. "Nathan, Theo needs consistency and trust." He was beginning to open up, to express himself. Disrupting that progress could be detrimental. Nathan nodded, remorse flickering in his eyes. "I see that now. I let my own fears and the influence of others blind me to the truth." He stood, extending his hand. "Clara, I apologize for doubting you. Please, come back and continue working with Theo. He needs you." Clara accepted his hand, a sense of relief washing over her. "Thank you, Nathan. For Theo's sake, I'm willing to put this behind us and focus on his well-being." As they exited the study, Clara couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, but with the truth unveiled and trust restored, she was ready to help Theo navigate his path to healing. Nathan Sterling sat alone in his expansive study, the weight of recent revelations pressing heavily upon him. The dim light from the desk lamp cast long shadows, mirroring the guilt that now clouded his conscience. He had wrongfully accused Clara, the one person who had genuinely connected with his son Theo. Memories of Clara's dedication flashed before him, her gentle approach with Theo, the patience she exhibited, and the subtle progress his son had made under her guidance. Nathan realized that in his desperation to protect Theo, he had been blind to the genuine care Clara had provided. Determined to make amends, Nathan reached for his phone, his fingers trembling slightly. He dialed Clara's number, each ring amplifying his anxiety. Finally, she answered, her voice cautious. "Clara, it's Nathan," he began, his tone heavy with remorse. "I owe you an apology, a profound one. I was wrong to doubt your integrity and to accuse you without seeking the truth." There was a pause on the other end before Clara responded, her voice measured. "Nathan, I appreciate your apology. But this isn't about me, it's about Theo. He needs consistency and trust." Nathan nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "You're right. I let my fears cloud my judgment. Can we meet to discuss how we can move forward for Theo's sake?" Clara agreed, and they arranged to meet the following day. As Nathan ended the call, a sense of relief washed over him, but he knew earning back Clara's trust, and more importantly Theo's, would require time and genuine effort. The next day, Nathan welcomed Clara back into the mansion. He led her to the study, where they sat across from each other, the weight of past misunderstandings hanging in the air. "Clara," Nathan began, his voice sincere, "I want to support your methods with Theo. You've reached him in ways no one else has. Please, guide me on how I can be a better father to him." Clara's eyes softened, seeing the earnestness in Nathan's demeanor. "It's about patience, Nathan. Theo needs to feel safe and understood. Together, we can create that environment for him." Nathan nodded, a renewed sense of hope filling him. "Thank you, Clara. Let's give Theo the support and love he deserves." With that, they set a plan in motion, united in their commitment to Theo's well-being, and Nathan vowed never to let misplaced judgment cloud his trust again. After uncovering the truth behind the fabricated email, Nathan felt a profound sense of remorse for having doubted Clara's integrity. Recognizing her unwavering dedication to Theo and her innovative approach to education, he sought not only to make amends but also to harness her expertise for a greater cause. Inviting Clara back to the Sterling estate, Nathan expressed his heartfelt apologies. "Clara," he began, "I deeply regret my earlier mistrust. Your commitment to Theo has been invaluable, and I now see the profound impact you've had on him." Clara acknowledged his apology with a gracious nod, her primary concern being Theo's well-being. "I'm here for Theo," she replied, "and I'm committed to supporting his growth." Nathan's demeanor shifted to one of earnest intent. "I have a proposition," he continued. "Beyond resuming your work with Theo, I'd like to offer you the position of Director of Education at the Sterling Foundation, a charity focused on supporting children with disabilities." Clara's eyes widened in surprise. "That's quite an offer," she responded, taken aback by the magnitude of the proposal. Nathan elaborated, "Your innovative methods and genuine empathy have made a significant difference in Theo's life. I believe that, in this role, you could extend that impact to countless other children facing similar challenges." The weight of the opportunity settled in Clara's mind. She had always been passionate about inclusive education, and this role would allow her to affect change on a broader scale. "I'm honored by your trust," Clara said thoughtfully. "I would need to understand more about the Foundation's current initiatives and how I can contribute effectively." Nathan smiled, sensing her cautious optimism. "Of course. Let's discuss the details, and I'll provide all the information you need. I believe together, we can create meaningful opportunities for children who need them most." As they delved into the specifics, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was filled with challenges, but with Nathan's support and her unwavering commitment to inclusive education, she was ready to embark on this new journey. After Nathan extended the offer for Clara to become the Director of Education at his charity foundation, she found herself at a crossroads. Her primary commitment had always been to Theo, guiding him through his challenges and witnessing his gradual progress. The bond they had formed was profound, built on trust and mutual respect. However, the prospect of influencing the lives of many children with disabilities was compelling. Clara envisioned the potential impact, developing inclusive educational programs, training educators in empathetic teaching methods, and advocating for children who, like Theo, needed understanding and support. She deliberated over the responsibilities this new role would entail. Transitioning from a hands-on educator to an administrative leader required careful consideration. Yet, the opportunity to shape policies and create environments where children with disabilities could thrive was a mission aligned with her passion. After thoughtful reflection, Clara recognized that accepting the position would not only allow her to continue supporting Theo but also enable her to extend her reach, benefiting countless other children in need. Clara arrived at the Sterling mansion one crisp autumn afternoon, the golden hues of the falling leaves reflecting the warmth she felt in her heart. As she entered the grand foyer, the sound of soft laughter drew her attention toward the living room. Peering in, she was met with a sight that made her pause. Nathan, usually immersed in his demanding work, was seated on the plush carpet beside Theo. Scattered around them were colorful building blocks, some stacked into precarious towers, others forming imaginative structures only a child's mind could conceive. Nathan's tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, a stark contrast to his typically immaculate appearance. He held a block in his hand, offering it to Theo with an encouraging smile. "How about we place this one on top?" Nathan suggested, his voice gentle yet filled with enthusiasm. Theo's eyes sparkled with a joy Clara hadn't seen before. He nodded eagerly, taking the block and carefully adding it to their creation. "Perfect!" Nathan exclaimed, his laughter harmonizing with Theo's giggles. Clara felt a lump form in her throat, moved by the tender interaction between father and son. It was a side of Nathan she had hoped to see, a father fully present, embracing the simple yet profound joy of playing with his child. Sensing her presence, Nathan looked up, his expression softening further. "Clara," he greeted, motioning for her to join them. "We've been working on a masterpiece here." She smiled, stepping into the room and kneeling beside them. "I can see that. It's quite impressive." Theo beamed with pride, leaning into his father's side, a gesture of affection and trust. In that moment, Clara realized the profound impact of their journey together. Nathan's willingness to connect with Theo on such an intimate level was a testament to the strides they had all made. The room was filled with warmth, not just from the sunlight streaming through the windows, but from the genuine bond forming between father and son, a bond Clara was honored to witness and nurture. In the journey of parenting, many parents often focus on enforcing strict discipline with the hope that their children will grow up to be successful. However, sometimes what a child truly needs is not reprimand but understanding and empathy from their parents. When parents listen and share with their children, they not only help them develop emotionally but also build a strong, trusting relationship. Demonstrating empathy can help calm a child and foster a connection between parent and child, making the child feel loved and supported. At the same time, becoming a good father or mother is not an innate ability. It is a process of learning and growth. Parents need to recognize that to effectively support their children, they must also develop skills in listening, understanding, and respecting them. By participating in parenting education classes, parents can gain deeper insight into their own parenting styles and their impact on their children, thereby creating a positive environment for their child's development. In summary, empathy and a parent's willingness to learn not only aid in a child's comprehensive development, but also strengthen family relationships, laying a solid foundation for the child's future.